ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Nick's Big Pumpkin 2024. This promises to be the most preposterous presentation on giant pumpkin propagation that you've ever put your pathetic little peepers on. I'm upping my game in pretty much every imaginable way, because this year, failure is simply not an option. And the first way that I'm upping my game is with these pedigreed seeds with insane genetics. So before we start our seeds, I wanted to talk briefly about the differences between the pumpkins that giant pumpkin growers grow and things that you would think of as regular pumpkins, the stuff you would put out in front of your house on Halloween and see at the grocery store and everything. So the main difference is the species. Giant pumpkin growers grow Cucurbita maxima, and most of the pumpkins that you're used to seeing are Cucurbita pepo. But if you go to the store and you buy some seeds that are labeled as Cucurbita maxima, you're not gonna get a truly giant pumpkin, okay? Maybe you'll get something 70, 80, 90 pounds, but it's not gonna be some insane psycho stuff like you're gonna see with special pumpkin seeds like this. So it all goes back to this guy named Howard Dill. He was a farmer in Nova Scotia, and over his life, he bred a very special strain of Cucurbita maxima.
This pumpkin would be roughly around 400 pounds at the moment, but genetically, I think it's capable of, producing 600 pounders and hopefully maybe 7s.
Of course, they were absolutely giant, and they were known as Dill's Atlantic Giants. And everyone was so impressed by his giant pumpkins that they bought his seeds and they continued on doing what he was doing, which was selective breeding for larger and larger and larger pumpkins. And eventually, we got here. And another difference is the price. For this little packet of regular pumpkin seeds, it's only $2.19 from Home Depot. And in my experience, that's pretty standard, no matter where you go. But for these bad boys, don't freak out, but I shelled out $35 a seed, and at 8 seeds, you can do the math. Which I know sounds completely psycho, like why are you spending that much money on giant pumpkin seeds? Well, I'll have you know, that's actually not that crazy. And don't freak out if you're a new grower and you're like, oh my god, I can't spend all that money on some stupid thing like that. There's super budget ways to do it. And a lot of the time, if you reach out to a really good grower, they'll just give you stuff for free. Of course, on the other end of the spectrum, there are some seeds, for example, the 2365 Wolf, the seed that grew the current world record holder, they are extremely valuable. Predictions that I've heard are like $800 to $1,000 a seed. These are kind of a nice middle ground, and they still have some insane genetics that I'll tell you about now. So here's what I'm growing this year. I'm going to do 4 seeds of the 1908 Connolly 23 and 4 seeds of the Wallace 1907. And you may be wondering what all these numbers and everything on the packaging mean. Well, it just means that the pumpkin that these seeds came out of was 1,908 pounds. It was grown by Stephen Connolly, who's kind of a legendary New England grower. And it was grown in 2023. Giant pumpkin, obviously. And then this means that the plant this pumpkin came off of came from a seed from the 2907 patent, which was the largest pumpkin ever grown. It is technically not the world record, I believe, because it had a split or some other issue with it, but still, it's the largest pumpkin ever grown. And then it was crossed with, which means it was pollinated by a male flower from the 2365 Wolf, which was that super expensive seed with insane genetics that I was talking about earlier, whose seed grew the world record pumpkin. So this seed is a cross of some insane genetics. I'm really excited for this in particular, and I think getting this for $35 a seed was actually a pretty amazing steal. and then the 1907 Wallace. These are from Ron Wallace, who is probably the most legendary giant pumpkin grower of all time. If you get into this hobby, you're almost certainly going to buy something from his store, or talk to him over email, or at the very least see videos of him, because he's been doing it at the highest level for a long time, and it would serve you very well to listen to him. And also, he lives in Rhode Island. I live in Connecticut, and so I thought, hey, if these seeds did well in southern New England, then I should probably give them a shot. And this is a cross of the 2006 Wolf and the 2365 Wolf. So once again, you have those insane world record potential genetics. I'm not saying that I'm aiming for the world record or anything, obviously, but needless to say, this is a genetically very potent seed, and I'm extremely excited to grow this one too. All right, so now that we've talked about what makes these seeds so special and what seeds I'm growing this year, I think that it is time to officially start them. All right, then we're gonna sand down the edges of our seeds. And the point of that is to try to make it a little bit easier for the seedling to get out of this hard shell. The cuticle, or kind of outer skin, of a giant pumpkin seed is really tough. This should just make it a little bit easier for the seedling to emerge out. Don't want to do anything too crazy, just sand it down a little bit. I like to think of this as like waking up a sleeping beast. You're kind of just like waking up a force of nature. And once we do that, there's no going back. Then we're just going to take our sanded seeds and drop them into our seaweed solution. After a couple hours, you're going to take your seeds out of the seaweed solution, and you're going to wrap them up in a damp but not wet paper towel. If it's too wet, you can get issues with mold and rot, so you got to make sure that it's just lightly dampened. You're going to put those in some labeled plastic bags, and then you're going to put them back in your germination chamber and wait a couple of days. Alright, hello everyone. It has been 48 hours since the seeds were saturated with that solution. And we have 4 out of 4 germination on the Wallace seeds, and the Connolly seeds are at like 2 out of 4 germination at the moment. So I'm gonna give them another 24 hours to see what they do. Probably should give them another like 48 hours. Usually they can take like 4-ish days, maybe 5 at the most to germinate. So since we got the Wallace seeds all germinated, we're gonna have to mix up some potting soil. Hey guys, this is future Nick. I just wanna say, don't do any of this. Go to the store and buy seedling starting mix, and then just put your seed in there. Don't worry about any of the other crap. You'll see why all this was such a mistake in an episode or two. This is, of course, special potting soil, just like everything else is in this hobby. You can't just do regular, straight out of the bag. You gotta add a bunch of ingredients like it's a wizard's potion or something. So the base of our potion is this. This is Fox Farm Happy Frog container or potting soil. Apparently this is what the cannabis growers use. That's what the guy at the garden center said. So yeah, that's the base. It's just nice and light and fluffy and well draining. And to that, we're gonna add a couple of interesting ingredients. Let's start with this, I guess. This is organic fertilizer. It's the Espoma plant tone. It's really nice. It's a little mix of a bunch of ingredients. And a lot of people think like you shouldn't add fertilizer of any kind to your potting soil. And I would probably have to agree with that. That sounds kind of like a good idea to me. But this is all organic, which means it's super slow release. It's not like a water-soluble fertilizer that's gonna burn your roots or your plants. This just adds, you know, a nice little bit of slow release nutrients to our mix. So yeah, what does that have in it? Feather meal, poultry manure, bone meal, alfalfa meal, green sand, sulfate of potash, magnesia. So that was about 3 cups into this bin, which is 4 times, so 12 gallons of potting soil. Oh, and I wanted to mention that as time goes on, I'm going to more thoroughly explain each ingredient because I can't really go into detail on every single one just right off the bat. So for this episode, we're going to talk about these 2 ingredients in particular. Azose and mycorrhizal inoculant. These are the 2 most common biologicals that giant pumpkin growers use. This is going to be in the arsenal of almost every single serious giant pumpkin grower in one form or another. If not these brands, then some other brand. So a biological is just a product that either is a living thing or helps out the living things that then help our giant pumpkin to grow. As opposed to something like a chemical fertilizer, which is just quick, direct, easily accessible nutrients. These make it easier for the plant to access the nutrients that already exist in the soil or the air or other places. So, starting out with azose. This is what's known as a nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Nitrogen is extremely important for plants. They use it for just about everything, but namely protein synthesis and creating chlorophyll. There's tons of nitrogen in the air. It's 78% nitrogen. That's what the atmosphere is. But plants can't use it because it's in the form N2. So, what this nitrogen-fixing bacteria does, it takes that nitrogen and it converts it into ammoniacal nitrogen, which is in the form of ammonia. That's what ammoniacal means. So the plants get this nitrogen that's in a form that they can actually use, and then in return, the plants give these bacteria certain compounds that they can't make themselves. So this is a symbiotic relationship with this bacteria, Azospirillum bacillans. And similarly, we have mycorrhizal inoculant, which also forms a symbiotic relationship with the plant, but instead of being a bacteria, it's a fungi. So a long time ago, when plants were first coming onto land out of the ocean, they had a really horrible root system. And the way that they got around that is by forming this symbiotic relationship with this little thread-like fungi. And that fungi would act like a root system for the plant, and then in return, the plant would give the fungi carbon-containing molecules that it itself could not create. And so by inoculating our soil with this, we are kickstarting that relationship between the pumpkin plant and this fungi. And there's a million benefits to using mycorrhizal fungi. It's extremely popular with almost every giant pumpkin grower. And some of the biggest ones are it helps with water uptake, phosphorus uptake, and lots of other micronutrients as well. We got our mycorrhizal inoculant. Gonna mix that in. It looks like kitty litter, kind of. And then we've got our azose. There was a half a cup of myco, and then this is a 1/4 cup of azose. We just want to inoculate our soil with this stuff. The volume isn't extremely important, but that's, you know, what the bags recommend. And then we're going to add micro root, which is kind of just a generic version of Root Shield, because name brand Root Shield is currently a bit out of my price range. So I'm 99.9% sure this is the same stuff. And there's no like good dosing instructions on the back of this, so I'm just gonna do half of it. And then we'll use the other half for the Connolly crop. And then finally we're gonna add, this is 1 tablespoon of vein splitter. This is vein enhancer and pumpkin accelerant. So I guess that stuff's pretty strong. That's just 1 tablespoon of that. So now that we've got everything in our bin, we're just gonna mix it up and then add some water. So I went to see the eclipse I'm from central Connecticut, and the path of totality went through northern Vermont. So I drove, it was 7 hours with traffic to get up there. It literally just felt like the world was ending. You just can't tell from the video. You know, it's just like a lot of the national parks that I tried filming on my road trip series. You just don't really get the magnitude and the majesty of it through video. So yeah, we just drove up there, found a little farmer's field. You know, nobody was around, so we just hopped in the field, sat down, and witnessed one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. I could only imagine how like a hunter-gatherer tribe would like mentally deal with that, thinking that the world was about to end. But luckily we had a gigantic blessed beeswax candle, just in case it ended up being the rapture.
Just in case.
Oh my God. No way. Oh, where'd he go? No way. They're back. Oh my God, I thought I had them all gone. I thought I had destroyed the population by relocating them, not physically destroying them. Oh my God. Well, I guess I gotta get trapping. All right, hopefully that's framed nicely again. So, this is pretty well mixed in my opinion. But then again, what do I know? If you're watching this and this is your first time trying to grow and you're gonna use me as like a guide, whoops, maybe take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I've done an insane amount of research and I feel really good about my plan, but there's a lot of guys who are pros on a next level, or maybe 3 or 4 levels above me. Check out like Chad New, Doc Rodabaugh, my favorite, and yeah, I'm following Justin Fossum's plan, at least in the beginning, like with seeds starting and all that. He's a cool young guy, very smart, good at growing big pumpkins, so thought I'd follow his plan. And then we're gonna hydrate this with dechlorinated spring water. I know it's dumb to like go buy bottled water. This is not obviously a permanent thing. This is literally just for the moment until I can get a better system going for like dechlorinating. And I have something in mind. Luckily my water company uses chlorine instead of chloramine. If you've got chloramine in your water, that is a bit of an issue. And you're gonna have to figure out some way around it. But if you just have chlorine, there's easy ways to get it out. So, what we want is to get this dirt or soil. When I was in college, I was in a soil mechanics class, and I called it dirt one time, and my professor was like, no, 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 this is not dirt. This is soil. They will pay you more if you call it soil. So I guess we need to get this soil to a level of moisture where if you squeeze it, only about 1 drop comes out. I can't believe we caught those little rodents on film. It's not good. That means that there's a large enough population that they're just tromping around. Or they're just teasing me. You can also add worm castings and a variety of other stuff, but from what I've learned, you kind of want to keep it simple. When the seedlings are small, they really don't need that much, you know, nutrition, water, really anything. There was a good saying I heard that you don't want to feed a baby a steak, aka you don't want to feed seedlings tons and tons of stuff. It's mostly just biologicals at this point. Check this out. When I take a little handful, there's a rock in it. When I take a little handful and squeeze it, actually, that's a bit too much water. You really only want 1 or 2 drops, but it is not really the end of the world. Like this sample, look. 1 or 2 little drops. So really, once I get it nicely mixed up again, it'll be fine. All right, so now that we've got this mixed up we're gonna fill up our grow bags. So I decided not to do pots and instead do these bags. I got the inspiration from Andy Wolf, from Chad News live stream with him, where he said that he uses grow bags instead of pots. So yeah, these are 3 gallons, and the reason that I'm doing that is so that the seedlings don't go root bound. And that's basically just when the roots fill up whatever container they're in and they start kind of getting tangled up and doubling back on themselves. And of course that is not really ideal because we want to start a really gigantic root system. And another reason that I chose to do these bags, you'll see this in effect later, but it makes transplanting way easier. All right, so now all that's left to do is plant the seeds into the pots. All you gotta do, take the seed. This is the first root forming. So I'm just gonna very gently make a small hole here. Actually, we don't even want it that deep. We basically want the seed to be just below ground level. If you can maybe just make out the absolute tip top of that, I think that is perfect. So that's all 4 seeds planted. Now we're gonna go back to the germination chamber / grow tent and get these guys up to 80 to 84 degrees.
They got great potential and the possibilities there.